evening. So myself and 12 other dames were sitting there feasting on Chinese food with broccoli, hard-boiled eggs, all kinds of Taco Bell with beans supreme this, beans supreme that. And what do you know? Myself and all the dames eat all this gassy food, right? So eating the gassy food and then kind of sitting, I felt my stomach kind of rumbling probably about like an hour and a half later. And what do you know? Myself and 3 other dames who I was friends with, and these were all women from upstate New York, who were at this party. And once the head of the dungeon told us that we had willing submissives who were willing to be trained for the lady of the dungeon, wanting to see, how we could kind of break in these new submissives. So she thought it would be kind of cool for us to have, Eproctophillia Fetish, to introduce these willing submissives who wanted to be domed from the evening and used for dame's pleasure, right? So, when I think of a submissive at a house dungeon party, I think of somebody who wants to be humiliated, somebody who wants to be put in a subservient position, whether they're cleaning the dungeon to get into the good grace of a dame. In this particular instance, me and 12 other dames were fed an array of gassy foods, and we were kind of, being, I guess, guinea pigs with the submissives. So we were then, me and myself and 2 other dame friends, this lady Jackie and this other woman, I forget her name, but anyway, we were all sitting up the thing, and these subs are on their hands and knees, and they all were told to come into the formal dining area. So not only did they have to clean up after myself and 12 other dames, they were told to kind of kneel in the nadu position, which is on their knees with their hands out to the side looking down. A slave or a submissive is not to look up at a dominant until they have permission, right? So with that being said, basically, so anyway, I had told the dungeon monitor, I said, well, I need to leave the room. He goes, why? I said, I have a gassy explosion. He said, oh, no. Go on over to one of the subs and call the house lady of the dungeon to the quarters, which they had got her, this woman, I'm not going to say her name. And she's sitting in her big throne watching myself and the other doms grab a hold of a submissive, grab him by the back of his neck, and bury his head in the crack of our ass. Now, mind you, we all have clothes on, but these submissives are wearing these kind of spandexy masks to where their eyes are covered, but their nose and their mouth is exposed. So, not that they were putting any of their part of their mouth on me, but they were definitely getting a taste or a smell of myself and these other gassy doms. So I didn't go first. I had a woman, Lady Jackie, decides to get up and grab a hold of a submissive who's kind of kneeling there. And she goes, Mistress Candy, watch this. She goes, let me show you how it's done. This is what we do. So she walks me over to the submissive who's in this kneeling Naju position for Gorian slavery, the highest form of protocol in a dungeon play party scene that was set up by the house dom who owns the dungeon. And she said that she was willing to train these submissives in the worst form of humiliation training. So her idea was fun to do some Eproctophillia Fetish. So I was kind of laughing, thought it was kind of funny. And Mistress Jackie walks up to this fella, grabs him by the back of his neck, and puts her big fat ass in his face and lets out this ginormous gassy bomb to where, honestly, I had to go get some air freshener. The whole dungeon smelled like a toilet from all these women, farting. Now, I didn't do any of it at the time. I kind of just sat back, kind of watched all the experienced dames kind of fart in these people's face, So I thought it was kind of interesting. how these doms were just walking and farting in these people's faces, and the subs were just kind of standing there, willingly accepting the gas. And one of them actually stood up and goes, "Thank you, mistress, may I have another?" Not to me, to this other dom. And I kind of laughed. I thought it was funny. I said, wow, these fucking people, like, really have a fetish for everything. People are just farting in people's faces. Then there was another dominant, this heavier set woman, I forget, Mistress Laura. She throws the submissive on the floor and decides to sit on his face. And, you know, she had like a mini skirt on with, I guess, no panties. I mean, she was running around telling everybody. And she basically had said that she threw him on the floor and wanted to use his face as a human gas chamber. Meaning, she would fart in his mouth and hover her ass cheeks over his nostrils. And she said the submissive just laid there and breathed in very deeply and was inhaling her gashy, noxious fumes. So I had then later in the night had said to the submissive, I said, wow, how did it feel to be farted on? He goes, honestly, it was the best thing I could ever have been here for. He goes, I've never been farted on by any woman. He goes, and I have to say it was pretty funny. He goes, even though they're gassy, he goes, but I'm kind of exploring the fart fetish. And this was, you know, myself talking to somebody who actually enjoyed being farted on by a woman. He said that when he was younger in his, you know, teenage years, his mom and his sister used to walk up to him and just blow farts right in his face. And as he got used to, you know, having the fart fetish, he really enjoyed, you know, when women would go and fart in his face, because it reminded him of him growing up and being in that safe environment. So a lot of people don't realize this, but fart fetish really is a serious addiction for most people. About, you know, like being farted on. So it's kind of interesting. So when people ask about eproctophilia, it's a paraphilia in which people are sexually aroused by flatulence, right? Eproctophiles are said to spend an abnormal amount of time thinking about farting and flatulence and have reoccurring intense sexual urges and fantasies involving farting and flatulence, which is kind of interesting, right? Now, people, it's kind of funny. Most of you people who are listening to me talk about this, a lot of people think that, you know, it's kind of hard to be sexually aroused by farts. But the fact of the matter is, you're not alone. There is tons of men who are interested in being farted on, right? They actually did a scientist study. A scientist published a case study for a person with eproctophilia. They're sexually aroused by flatulence. Hold on, I'm just saying something. So it's kind of an interesting situation for people to be, you know, attracted to gas, right? Now, when you're a kid, most of your friends and you fart in public, which I used to do when I was younger, and I did it just to be funny. I didn't really care so much about the smell. I just wanted to be an obnoxious bitch with my friends. So we would be out in public, and when I was younger, I would eat a lot of gassy shit, and, you know, I would kind of fart in public. It wasn't really the biggest deal, but now, of course, I'd be a little bit more reserved to do it. Now, here's another one. Olfactophilia, also known as osmolangia or I can't even pronounce this one. Asfrislangia and azolinalgia is a paraphilia where the individual derives sexual pleasure from smells and odors, right? So think about it. People who are attracted to people farting, that's called eproctophilia, and that makes you an eproctophile, right? Then you have olfactophilia, people who are deriving sexual pleasure from smells and odors. Now, it could be an odor of dirty panties, sometimes guys get excited about women with stinky crotches, right? And I'm not meaning like stinky like as in fish. I mean like sweaty crotch, like somebody, like a chick that goes to the gym and gets all sweaty, and she walks past a guy, and a guy's like, oh, he like smells her pheromones, right? So olfactophilia is the sexual pleasure from smells and odors. Then you mix that with eproctophilia, which is the fart fetish. So eprocto and olfacto together, right? So they say one subtype of olfactophilia is eproctophilia. It's a paraphilia in which people are sexually aroused by flatulence. Therefore, eproctophiles are said to spend an abnormal amount of time thinking about farting, flatulence, and having reoccurring sexual intense urges and fantasies involving farting and flatulence. There has been no academic or clinical research into eproctophilia, right? Therefore, people that they do brief case studies of an eproctophile given a pseudonym. His name was Brad, right? This guy gave full consent for his case to be written up on the understanding that he could not be identified and that he was guaranteed full anonymity and confidentiality. Now, it's kind of an interesting story. He was a 22-year-old single man from Illinois. His parents were divorced when he was 6, and he was an only child. His father remarried when he was 14, and then he gained 3 stepbrothers. He has a bachelor's degree in fine arts. He was employed in part-time work, but then was looking for another job to help supplement his income. He was engaged in minimum wage part-time stuff, would like to get a job in the art field, but that required materials that he does not currently have. He believes in God or a prime mover, but does not adhere to any particular religious group. Now, this is kind of an interesting story. Brad first approached this author following the publication of an article about eproctophilia. On the author's website blog, this guy initially posted a comment in response to the article and disclosed the response that he was an eproctophile. In fact, his opening comment was, I am an eproctophile. I am not ashamed of my interest. Mind you, I don't tell people that I'm into that anymore, that I discuss anything other than sexual matter in public, right? He was asked about this on his sexual orientation. The response was not straightforward. Somebody who did this article wrote, I could be any of the 3 depending on the perspective in terms of relationships. I am straight, heterosexual. I could only date or have romantic feelings towards a female. In terms of fetishism, I am bisexual. I get aroused thinking of both males and females in these fetish situations. However, I have no real desire for sexual intercourse, be it penetration or being penetrated, which could make me asexual. I should have probably mentioned that the arousal mentioned above is a desire to masturbate, not to have sex. So in this guy's in particular, he is into farts. He loves to smell dirty things and loves to masturbate. He's not interested in the sexual aspect of having sex with someone. He'd rather jerk off and smell farts, right? Which is kind of interesting. So whoever interviewed him, they named this guy Brad. So I'm going to read a little bit about it because it's kind of an interesting story and has to do a lot with the fart fetish that I'm going to be discussing tonight. You know, most people, when you talk to them about fart fetish, they think it's fucking disgusting. But yet then you have people who do the pantyhose fetish, who wear pantyhose as a man with pantyhose sheer on their legs and their cock and balls, right? They like the feel of the silky attire that they're wearing, and therefore they get sexually aroused by it, okay? In this situation, this fella could buy a video of women or men farting, watch it, fart himself, so he creates the stenchy atmosphere, and while he's smelling himself, he would then jerk off. This is how he gets off sexually. He'd rather smell a dirty smell than have to have sex with somebody. So this is kind of an interesting outlook from somebody who's actually a fetishist, right? So somebody asked him about his first experiences of eproctophilia, and he claimed that he compared to other eproctophiles who had colorful first experiences. His experience was a bit more tame than most, which is disappointing in a way. the person recalled that in middle school he had a crush on a particular girl. He thought she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She was very athletic, ran 10 miles every day, was